We've been listening to the preliminary hearing for Tyler Robinson, who's charged with the assassination of conservative influencer Charlie Kirk. So we were just hearing there some questioning. Help us understand what is happening. Anna Schecter, who covers crime for CBS News and joins me now, what we just watched and what was happening within the context of now. This is what, day 4 of this hearing?
Day 4 of this hearing, the 4th of 5 days. It will end at the end of the day tomorrow. Today is the big day because we are hearing from the former roommate of Tyler Robinson, the man who has been charged with the murder of Charlie Kirk. Now, Lance Twiggs, this person, we are seeing text messages sent between Twiggs and Robinson from right after the alleged shooting, in which they talk about the weapon, and then later we hear about communications between them in which Robinson essentially acknowledges that he carried out this alleged attack. So all of this is really interesting. We saw a little bit earlier today, we saw an image of Lance Twiggs in a video statement. A lot of that we're not able to see. Some of this is just audio. We'll be hearing that shortly, where we hear from Twiggs exactly what the interactions were like around that time, leading up to this day when Charlie Kirk was murdered, and then after, when Robinson comes back home. Apparently he was acting erratically, according to Twiggs. So a lot of new information. But what we were just hearing about, when we saw those text message exchanges, we've never seen it on the phone like that. So that was interesting to see that. We have seen many of those laid out in the charging documents, however. So we set it up with that, and then we're going to be hearing from Twiggs in their own words about how this played out, how this day played out. We'll be hearing shortly about whether or not they discussed politics. Twiggs says they didn't really discuss politics, maybe Trump a little bit. They didn't discuss gender identity. These are the questions that Twiggs was asked in this interview. So this is a big moment, and we will see if the judge will continue to allow this to be used as they go to trial. The judge did admit this in part to be shown today. There is more video testimony that the judge said could not be shown today. And actually, Erica Kirk's own lawyer made a vigorous argument that all of it should be shown to dispel any doubts about the judicial process here.
And so this is sort of a unique situation here, unique in Utah, this preliminary hearing
Absolutely.
that we're having, because it's essentially up to the judge to decide whether there is enough evidence to go to trial, enough evidence to pursue the death penalty in this case. Why is it that we're hearing from Lance Twiggs in a video deposition and not Twiggs in person in this hearing? So
what we know is that Twiggs received partial immunity in order to give this testimony. His lawyer says that he's been cooperating with investigators, but as part of that immunity agreement, it was decided that Twiggs would be in this video testimony, that Twiggs would not have to come in person. We weren't there in that room, so we don't know how that agreement came to be, but I imagine that that was a preference of Twiggs to not have to come in and sit in this courtroom. It's like a mini trial. Normally, in a lot of other states, this is what happens during a grand jury proceeding. But here we're having this mini trial where we're seeing a lot of the cards that prosecution has to play. We're seeing the defense tactics, how the defense attorney is trying to poke holes in assumptions potentially that prosecutors or investigators made, that it was in fact Robinson there on that roof, even though the footage is grainy and you can't be 100% certain from that video. So all of this is playing out in a highly unusual manner for, if you look against the rest of the 49 states. Only in Utah do you have preliminary hearings such as this, where we take a week and one judge sits there and will listen to this evidence and make a decision. Can this go to trial or not?
all right, let's listen a little bit more to the proceedings.
I'm going to break down a few things. You mentioned, I just want to make sure the record's clear. You mentioned Celebrate a few times. What is Celebrate?
It's a downloading software that's commonly used by law enforcement. I don't do that myself, but it's commonly used to recover data, to download electronic devices, particularly cell phones.
And then you mentioned SIAC. What does that mean?
It's the Statewide Information Analysis Center. It's a division within DPS. It's a fusion center. They assist law enforcement with intelligence, various intelligence information for our investigations.
You mentioned that you don't personally do Cellbrite phone extractions. Have you spoken to the law enforcement officers that performed the Cellbrite extraction on Mr. Twiggs' phone in this case?
I don't believe I specifically talked to those individuals, the RCFL, that did that. But they, yeah, that was then provided to SBI.
Did you speak with officers at SBI that have recovered this photo that we're seeing in State's Exhibit 16.3?
Yes, I've spoken to, I have spoken with an SIAC analyst who in particular found this image. I've spoken to her personally as well.
Was Mr. Twiggs shown what's been marked as State's Exhibit 16.3 during his second interview?
Yes, he was.
And again, you were present for that?
Yes, I was there.
Is Exhibit 16.3 a fair and accurate representation of the photo law enforcement obtained from Mr. Twiggs' phone and that he was subsequently shown in the second interview?
Yes, it's fair and accurate.
Your Honor, the state would move to admit Exhibit 16.3 and then also publish pursuant to court order.
Mr. Novak.
Just noting the objections that have previously been made, and I think that the court's order is that it may be published in the courtroom only.
Thank you. Noting the standing objection by defense, 16.3, correct?
Correct.
Is admitted into evidence and may be published only in the courtroom and not be shown or videoed.
All right, it looks like they are going to be going over some evidence here that is for the courtroom only and cannot be disseminated further. So bringing Anna Schecter back. Anna, as we're following this proceeding as it's happening, this is also very significant, possibly the most significant day so far of the hearing that we've heard, because remember, after the shooting, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, we were hearing, and once Tyler Robinson had been arrested as a suspect, the communication that he had been having with the roommate/partner, who we now know as Twiggs, talking about, I'm paraphrasing here and you can correct me if I'm wrong, don't tell me this was you, or alluding to something like that. And then essentially Robinson, and again, innocent until proven guilty, but saying to Twiggs, I'm so sorry I'm embroiling you in this. I mean, that was a huge headline after the fact. And then now, here we are almost a year later, and we are actually hearing from Twiggs himself.
This is the first time that we are hearing from Twiggs. Twiggs has laid low for months. Remember, this all happened back in September, and within 48 hours, Robinson's parents recognized him from those surveillance videos that law enforcement put out and convinced him to turn himself in. That led to the arrest, and now we are here 10 months later, and the day after his arrest, they gave a press conference with state and federal law enforcement, and they read out text messages. They wanted to show why they were arresting Tyler Robinson. And so we had heard about this, but to now be able to see this person who was living with Robinson at the time of this alleged murder, who saw Robinson come home afterwards. This is a little bit of news that we'll probably be hearing shortly, that Robinson actually drove back home. What was that like? So this is really important to the prosecution, because essentially you have what looks like an admission of guilt. Now, Robinson's defense attorneys are not characterizing that at all. In fact, they have made every indication they want to go to trial, and that team has been poking holes where they can, where investigators made assumptions where they couldn't have been 100% sure that it was Robinson. So they are mounting this defense, all this playing out this week, and now let's see how they handle Twiggs. Think about this. Twiggs is essentially testifying against Robinson. That also might be why Twiggs was allowed to do this over video and not come in. Because if Twiggs had no idea that this was happening, which is what Twiggs says, you can just imagine being pulled in, which Robinson even alluded to in some of those messages, being pulled into one of the highest profile murder cases in the country. I remember on this day sitting in the chair with you discussing how this was all playing out and when we were read these text messages. So today is a big day.
Has Robinson entered a plea?
Robinson has not entered a plea, and we will see what the judge decides if this will go to trial. At that point, I expect to see a plea. Utah is very unique in how these types of cases are carried out. The carriage of justice in this state is different than most other states. And so normally in a case like this, we would have had a plea. Within 10 months, we'd likely hear a plea. Take Luigi Mangione. As soon as the charges were filed, you had initial hearings, there was an arraignment, there was an entry of a not guilty plea. That has not happened in this case. I expect that once the judge makes that announcement, then following motion at the next hearing, we will see a plea from Robinson. But there's every indication that Robinson intends to plead not guilty.
Is this the first time that we are seeing the family of Charlie Kirk, including his widow, Erica Kirk, and his parents in the same room as Robinson?
This is the very first time we're seeing Charlie Kirk's parents and Erica Kirk in the same room as Robinson. So Erica Kirk she has not been at any of the previous hearings. That was a huge moment on Monday where she was in that same room and she had support from people like Don Jr. and his wife. A couple of other friends showed up to show their support. This is the first time that I've seen Charlie Kirk's parents in a public setting like this. So really interesting to see them interact. At times you see Erica Kirk lean over and give her mother-in-law a hug. All of this is really interesting to see, especially since there's been so much speculation, so many conspiracy theories around this. It's really good in a way to be able to see these people and show the public who these people are, the humanity and the real human story behind these family members who have lost their loved one.
What other evidence have we heard from this week? Obviously, we're reading the text messages and hearing from Twiggs today. But has the murder weapon ever been found? Have they been able to connect any of the bullet casings that had the engravings which said, "Hey, fascist, catch"? Have they been able to connect any of those to Robinson?
Great question. The gun that was allegedly used belonged to Tyler Robinson's grandfather. Initially, that caused the investigative process to be delayed because the ATF, the federal agency charged with figuring out what kind of weapon, they couldn't figure it out. It was even difficult to match the casings to this gun because this gun is so old. But guess what? That gun was found wrapped up in a towel, thrown in the bushes, allegedly by Robinson. And guess what we learned this week? That there was Robinson's DNA on that towel and Twiggs's DNA on that towel. They lived together, so that would make sense. But wow, that was a big moment when we learned about the DNA a couple of days ago. So prosecutors are laying out their case that this was the murder weapon, but there was a hiccup over the preceding 10 months about pinning those casings to this weapon because it's so old. So the defense will probably try to lean into that as well. But even in those text messages with Twiggs, Robinson references his grandfather's gun and sort of touts it as it being a good shot. So that, of course, the prosecution is going to use that on their side.
So we have today being some of the most bombshell testimony yet of the hearing, but you said this isn't expected to wrap up until the end of the day tomorrow. So what more are you going to be looking for?
Defense is going to call 2 witnesses. I'm really curious who that might be. So that's a big question. And I expect to see that play out throughout the day tomorrow. It's a full day again tomorrow, beginning at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. And the judge has said that they must wrap up by 5 p.m. Mountain Time tomorrow. And then at that point, we'll subsequently hear the judge's decision.